So do you find yourself out there in the world trying to find a book to read? Everything is not speaking to you. You want to find something a little more over the top and crazy and silly, unlike the typical tropey books that are out today. Well, personally, I found a book just for you. This book, which is called J.R. Castillo Comes Home, which is written by Johnny A. Mann, is a story of a writer from that comes back to his hometown. He's a noir writer, and he tries to get back with his high school crush as well as dealing with a serial killer in his hometown. And as you expect, if you read Johnny A. Mann's material before, it's over the top, it's silly, it's graphic, and it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of heart and inventiveness put into it. But it's also a book that, is unique for its own right, and it's a book that I definitely recommend. If you read anything else that he's written, it's something that you might find fun, you might find entertaining, and I highly recommend it. So, definitely check it out. It's currently on Barnes & Noble's online retail store. But once again, that is J.R. Castillo Comes Home, which is written once again by Johnny A. Mann. And yeah, it's a book that I highly recommend. So definitely check it out, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys. Hey, Triv.
Yeah.
Guess what time it is? It's time to review Mission Impossible Fallout. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's Flashback Reviews, where I take movies from the past, break them down, and tell you what I think about them. All right, guys, we are at the conclusion of this retrospective of the Road to Dead Reckoning, the last film before Dead Reckoning Part 1 of the Mission Impossible franchise. We, of course, are going to be talking about Fallout, which you may or may not realize I have reviewed this movie before.
Gasp.
But this is a little more special because that was my first review, and if you go back and watch it, it is not very good, to be fairly honest, and I am not very good at reviewing at that moment. I decided to re-review this movie because Triv over here has not seen it. She is now a full non-version of the Mission Impossible franchise, and I'm excited to talk about this movie because this is considered the favorite of most people who love this franchise, but also this movie holds a lot of nostalgia for me when it comes to this channel and when I first started. Yes, I did a podcast with a couple individuals before it, but the first video I ever posted was this film, and it was a perfect film to start with because it's a great film and it's a franchise that I love, and I hope Triv feels the same, but we'll get to that in a second. Triv, how you doing? Welcome back.
Oh yeah.
Do you feel like you've been through the Fallout?
I'm on the road to Dead Hell Reckoning or Dead Reckoning Hell or
But that's just part one. Just wait till you get to part two.
Has that even been started yet?
I think so. I don't know.
Oh, sweet.
It's we'll find out if the writer's strike ever finishes, if they finish it.
Yeah, well, they need to get stuff sorted before anything else can be kind of said. So, real world versus the world of that. So, but no,
Exactly.
yeah, that's been quite a ride, man. I gotta say, it's you really can't define it until you go through it. The only thing I regret is not seeing them on the big screen, like, because just the way you've described, even like the non-IMAX experience, I think would have been cool.
Well, you're correct in that with Dead Reckoning when you apparently go see it in IMAX, you're saying. So
yay!
Yeah, I know that's a lot that's filmed in IMAX, so it should be pretty exciting to watch.
That should be amazing. Looking forward to it.
So Triv, Mission Impossible Fallout is of course the last film before the new film comes out. It came out in 2018, I think July 27th in the United States. Once again, it was the first movie I ever reviewed for the channel. It holds some nostalgia, like I said. But Mission Impossible Fallout is, of course, it comes off the heels of Rogue Nation. It comes off the heels of being the next film that Chris McQuarrie is directing in this franchise. And it brings back everyone pretty much from the last film, including, Tom Cruise himself and Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg. Rebecca Ferguson comes back. Sean Harris. It doesn't bring back, unfortunately, Jeremy Renner because he was involved with another smaller franchise, possibly, I guess you could call it, called Avengers Endgame, the most successful film outside of Avatar. But it also brings back people like Michelle Monaghan, who's of course from the third film and was in the fourth film a little bit. Brings back Alec Baldwin from the last film, and it's a film that definitely ups the ante on the Mission Impossible stuff. But Triv, you and I watched this together. You had time, I had time. It's Sunday. We're recording this like 2 weeks before this even posts. As somebody who has gone through this franchise now, seen every film, how does this film stack up to the other films? And do you still hold the same feeling that the Ghost Protocol is the best film? Like, once again, this is a film that is considered the people's favorite. It's the film that people feel that is the defining film of this franchise until Dead Reckoning. I'm sure
Right.
we'll see how that plays out. But overall, this film, how does it stack? And is it your favorite of the franchise? Like, how do you feel about it?
I've been trying to think about that since we watched it, and the one thing that I'll say about this film is it doesn't feel like quite the ensemble cast that 5 did. And I think that plays in quite a lot. Not to say that it's not like a hugely amazing and awesome film, just like not that it's not the same bombastic spectacle, but it seems a little bit toned down from 5. Does that make sense? Like there's a lot of stuff that happened, but it's not like I don't know, like the stakes are just as big and everything else. Yeah. But I don't know, just 5 seemed like a bigger.
Right. Is that weird? You mentioned something about no. You mentioned something about Tom Cruise feeling like a more personal story for Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt's character.
Yeah, it felt more like it was focused on like just because you don't really, not to say you don't see Benji and Luther and Rebecca and Elsa, but it seems so much more focused on Ethan Hunt than it did everybody else.
And that's what I've been kind of hinting at when I said, it deals with the Syndicate, which this is the offshoot of the Syndicate called the Apostles and stuff like that. But the story really started to take form in the third film when it showed Ethan Hunt as an individual who was a human being. I think the first 2 films show Ethan Hunt as this like super spy, but when it becomes more personal and personable to a character like this who feels like he has real stakes, he has people he cares about, these people get in serious jeopardy, as we see with Julia's character, we see with Benji's character, we see with Rebecca Ferguson's Ilsa character. I think it allows a character like Ethan Hunt to progress in a much more humanistic way than is ever been done in this entire series up till the third film.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I have not seen Dead Reckoning at this point. I will have either seen it or will be seeing it the week that the review post. But Dead Reckoning is supposed to be kind of the culmination of everything in Ethan's life, how it's coming back to haunt him. They're bringing back Henry Czerny, they're bringing back other characters from the original movies and stuff like that, and it really feels like they're touching on a character that has left a lot of collateral damage, and he's trying to do everything he's doing to protect that family, but that he considers family at this point. I mean, Luther Stickle is like his closest friend. Ilsa has now become kind of his love interest in a lot of respects. Benji's become kind of his sidekick or whatever. And then, you have all these characters that just have been through all the muck and rake and craziness that this franchise has put him through. And I think this movie really represents like Ethan Hunt as a human being and as a individual that will go every step to protect his family in a lot of respects. And I don't know if you agree with that or not.
No, I think so. I think that, I mean, if we learned one thing from this movie, it's that, and it was mentioned even at the end, how he MIF kind of embodies that need to take individual IMF. Thank you. Sorry. IMF it values individual just as much as greater good. And that's one of the things that was respected about Ethan Hunt to that extent.
Yeah. And I mean, the idea of the title of the franchise being called Mission Impossible is a mission of impossible stakes, impossible odds, impossible chances. And the idea of this movie being kind of like when you make a mistake and you have the fallout of that mistake, you start seeing it as a more personal issue, as this franchise has done with Ethan Hunt's character, than anything I've seen before. I mean, you could say, James Bond with the character that Eva Green played, there's kind of a running thing there. You could say with like Jason Bourne with like his name and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's really interesting when you kind of just like, you look at the title, you look at the character, you look at what he has to go through and the impossible stakes that he has to. I mean, this guy he's like Indiana Jones, where he is so important to the world around him that it's almost kind of scary that he's not, in a prison cell at the moment, but he's like the world's biggest protector or something like that. So
he's the hero that we don't deserve, but that we need.
Yeah. He's the guy that, lived long enough to be the hero, but did not become the villain, that type of thing.
Exactly.
I don't
No,
know.
absolutely. You can totally see that. And I mean, I think this far into any franchise, you do have to take that. You can't keep them as a distant, icy, ice in their veins type
Mhm.
of a character. You do have to give them that personality to keep people invested. It's like when they talk about,
Yeah.
like in Marvel, when you have a villain that you actually give a shit about, where you can see their humanity and stuff, it becomes so much more of a compelling story. And that's one of
Yeah.
those things that on the villain side of Mission Impossible, of the Mission Impossible series, outside of Philip Seymour Hoffman, we really haven't seen that. But they do make up for that with the people that we should care about and do care about in Luther and Benji and Ethan.
Yeah, and I think Sean Harris is much more developed in this movie
Oh yeah.
than he was. He feels like a much more fleshed out villain than he was in the last movie, and that's just because instead of killing off the villain right away, they allow him to progress from movie to movie, and you don't really see that. Like, I mean, they tried to do that with Blofeld in the James Bond, Daniel Craig era, but it just doesn't work very well, and I think it works better here because this isn't what you would call the most complex story ever put on screen because it's all about a bomb. Three was it
Three plutonium cores.
Potomac, yeah, cores being stolen, and of course IMF and Cruz and his people have to go and recover and try and do what they need to do. But I mean, to be fairly honest, it's not really that complex. They have a mission; they have to go after these plutonium cores, which I can't pronounce apparently, and yeah, and we get introduced to new characters, and that's in the end. You don't need a complex story to be thrilling. You just need the action to work. You need the characters to be, interesting and likable or not likable, depending on the character. And they have to be kind of intriguing. The story has to be intriguing. Like you can watch a Harry Potter movie. It's about a kid who lost his family in the middle of a wizarding war. It's not that complex, but the characters are interesting to watch. Same with Lord of the Rings. It's about the recovery of a MacGuffin object by an oppressor and a lot of the things. So it's not really that complex. It's just how well can this writer being Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise, how well can they develop their characters? And I think that's why this movie and these movies have worked, up from the third movie and beyond. So
yeah. I think too it's and you touched on that, but it's journey over destination. Because in the grand scheme, that final set piece where the climax hits is very important, but it's a culmination of everything to get there that I always found a little bit more interesting than the final battle. Just because I think at that point, like, and this is something that you could debate one way or the other, but with these, summer blockbusters like this, you need a happy ending. Normal audiences, you look to that. It's important. So even if there is some kind of fallout, not to, take on a meme.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. Thank you. But I do think that, it's going to get down to that 1 second and they're going to save the day. Even if there's repercussions for it afterwards, in that moment, that huge threat is going to be taken care of. But it's that, the stuff up until then, we'll get into it, but the stuff that happens with Benji, you're like, no, and then, oh no, and maybe, oh no.
Well, the other thing that this franchise has done, and I think I've mentioned this in the past, is it's smartly done. It's smartly directed. It feels like a popcorn film, but also a well-produced, slickly directed, fun, smart. I mean, smart in the sense of like, it's not like Transformers or it's not like, Avengers. It feels more like an adultish popcorn film where it has set pieces that feel like something that James Cameron would direct in a lot of respects when it comes to just the spectacle of it all. I mean, there's stuff that's happening in this movie that is not what I would call the biggest things he's ever done, because you look at the Burj Khalifa stuff and like whatnot, but they're thrilling, they're interesting, they're shot well, they're done well. It's just everything about it makes it for one of the more intriguing properties on the market, and that's what I like and love about this franchise and what it's done. You can take another motor chase I can't pronounce today, another motorcycle chase sequence, or jumping out of a plane, or flying a helicopter, And those things have been done a billion times before. But not only are you adding Tom Cruise into the mix, who's an insane human being and to begin with, and the creditors that are, the insurance companies that are having heart attacks, but the action sequences they're tightly wound together, they're tightly produced, they're tightly directed, they're intense, and that's what I love about it. Yes, you can have your once again action figures banging up against each other, but if you're throwing everything in the kitchen sink at the wall, that's not what makes a good action scene. This is what makes a good action scene. The simple 3 to 5 minute sequence of him jumping out of the airplane, the halo jump, is more thrilling than I hate to say it's more thrilling than the last battle sequence of the Avengers Endgame. And maybe I'll get a lot of crap for that. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on how many people watch this video. But
I do
like
think
that,
just with that in mind, though, I think you're going to have, it depends on how you look at it, because the big set piece of Avengers Endgame is so vast, but you do a lot of that is CGI, and I think that's an easy thing to see versus like a practical, what is largely practical effects, and gigantic ass balls, and that's not to take away from the acting, because I do think you do have to up your game if you're acting in a fully CGI environment, but you can't take away from the fact that these not even old school, these practical effects that aren't used enough in modern times for a variety of reasons, both, fair and, cost driven and such, they do make the scene different,
Yeah, and I don't want to discount like Avengers Endgame or Transformers and stuff like that. I'm not saying that they're terrible. I guess when it gets exhausting, or when it becomes too much, it becomes like a what's that, endurance test, I guess is the easiest way to put it.
I could see that.
Where the scenes in this movie of Mission Impossible Fallout or Rogue Nation or Ghost Protocol, the scenes are just long enough to not feel like an endurance test. They're thrilling, they get you out of your seat, they make your heart race and stuff like that, but they're not spending 45 minutes to an hour doing that. And once again, I'm not trying to discount what Avengers Endgame did, because that's a very complex, it's well done. I mean, it's some of the most insane stuff I've ever seen, but it's just like, I'd rather have this 9 times out of 10 any day of the week, watching something what Tom Cruise will do. Like, I'm excited to see what they do in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning more than what The Flash did, or I mean, to an extent, even what Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse did. So,
but I think too, I think that Transformers and Endgame are in different camps in this particular respect, but with especially Transformers, any of the movies outside of maybe Bumblebee, you have no sense of where things are happening. Like, you might be here and then you're over there and then you're here. There's no sense of connection and like gravity to that moment, because you're just kind of all over the board. You get, it's like the slime, or like the ooze war in Venom, like the second Venom movie. You have no idea what the hell's going on, because it's so intensely CGI packed. It's hard to kind of keep the distance. The one thing you can give this movie, and you mentioned it, the way it's shot, the way it's edited, the way it's choreographed is so tight. But you know exactly where you are at all times. And I think that does make a difference to the viewing experience. Not for everybody. I think some people will sit down and go, hey, that was amazing. I just, I got to see my favorite characters. I did the thing and I moved on. But to those of us that do a little bit deeper, I do think that does affect it.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. It's different strokes for different folks is what it basically boils down to. I may like something completely different than you like, for instance.
Like pineapple on pizza.
Well, okay, where's the stop button?
Are you gonna have you sent a missile to blow me up?
No, but I've sent a package, and I have the device here. Just takes 15 minutes.
Oh shit. How many bombs do I need to disarm?
I mean, they look like little pineapples, so I mean, I don't know, 25.
Crap. Okay.
No, I mean, yeah, like I said, you like pineapple, and I think you're disgusting. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I never.
No, but no, honestly, I mean, it's true.
Pineapple people unite.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it's true. I mean, like I said, it's different people like different things, and I get that. But I also got to ask you, Jeremy Renner not being in this movie, did it feel like he was missed at all?
I kind of did, actually. I guess I really enjoy his character. Like, there's very few movies that I don't enjoy him in. Just because he brings a certain like kind of a sarcastic nature that you don't really get with Tom Cruise as much. Not to say you don't get some of that with like Luther and Benji, but it's a different kind of feel.
I just don't know what they would do with him in this movie. Like
Yeah,
there's so much like I don't know if they had to do a rewrite, but
it's
it almost feels like
definitely
he would just be left behind, I guess, or
yeah,
killed.
and
Maybe he would have been like the Alec Baldwin character. I mean, I don't know.
it's hard to say. I think that if it certainly wasn't written with him in mind, and
Yeah.
I don't know if he would have been there. I don't know. I don't know. You would have had to divide duties and stuff. I mean, and obviously that's based on the script the way that it stood at this moment, not written for a 5-person team instead of a 4-person team.
Yeah.
Just generally, I did miss a little bit of what he brought to the table. But yeah, given the way the script is written, I don't know where you'd put him, especially with the
Yeah, I
addition
mean,
of Cavill. That just, I don't know.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's true. It's yeah, it's like you could kind of see it in the fifth film where he was kind of getting left behind a little bit, to be fairly honest, and it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, this film. Well, let me ask you this question: would this be your favorite of the Mission Impossible films, or is it still Ghost Protocol, or like
You
what's
know,
your honest opinion? Like, how do you like? How do you?
it's hard
I know
for
you don't
me
like
to.
rankings, but
No. It's kind of hard to like the last 3 have been so
mm,
solid, and the fact that they all kind of fit together as a really nice like Mission Impossible sandwich.
yeah,
I have a hard time like they all have their very strong suits as far as scenes go, and the humor and everything that went into them. Ghost Protocol still ranks up there pretty high for me. Just like Bridge Khalif was just such a iconic, amazing scene. But I can't
yeah.
say like you can't obviously just look at that one piece. I think the 3 together are so strong. I have a hard time like ranking one over the other, really. And I'm not trying to cop out. I don't know how to. I don't know. They all just they all have their strengths. They all have their weaknesses. But altogether, I think that they work really good they work in harmony with each other.
Yeah, fair enough. Like I said, it's one continuous story basically, but
I'm terrible. I'm sorry.
no, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Is it? Is
Triv,
it?
it's all good.
Is it?
I guess I don't know anymore. I'm sorry.
You should be. I did enjoy with this one. And if there is any differences between them, like there's slight things. It's like the difference in ranking like number 6 as 1 versus number 4 as 1 or number 5 as 1 is very, very small. Like they all have their great moments, their great chases. The fact that Solomon or that Lane kind of is more together in this one, I really appreciated. Like the chase scenes were fantastic. The last,
Yeah.
every film ups its game. The last,
Right.
the climactic ending of this one is, off the damn chain.
Right. And I was actually I was trying to figure out, I was trying to remember because a lot of this movie shot in IMAX, and I do remember seeing this at the Port Orlando Regal IMAX. People might know that if they from around Orlando, but I remember the one thing I remember is how visceral the IMAX scenes were in this movie.
Oh,
And
I
I
bet.
was telling you during the when we were watching it that you could tell when the scenes that were filmed in IMAX because the scope actually transitions, and the Paramount version of this movie, or the Paramount Plus version, which I was really surprised about. But I was telling you about how like when you shoot in IMAX, and Christopher Nolan has talked about this, and other people have talked about how there's some kind of clarity in an IMAX
Oh yeah.
film that really stands out, the vibrancy, and you can tell the difference between when they shoot in IMAX and when they shoot in 35 millimeter or digital 35, whatever they shoot in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really noticeable here, especially in the last sequence, which I thought was kind of interesting. But
I would agree.
yeah, a lot of this movie once again was shot around the world, in Paris, New Zealand, United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, and stuff like that. London. You were telling me all the points that you were pointing out all the movies that this movie films around, like
Well,
Inception
in
and stuff like that.
Paris, yeah, and in Paris
Yeah.
there was 3 or 4 places that stood out as popular movie going locations, but
Yeah, I mean, I recognize one from John Wick Chapter 4 that was in this movie and stuff like that. And it's just funny when you start seeing other movies that have the same kind of locale, like the Arc de Triomphe and stuff like that. And it's always funny. But
oh yeah.
with that said, this movie came out July 27th, 2018, was a pretty big hit. Was the 8th highest grossing movie of 2018. Was the highest grossing film of Tom Cruise's career till Top Gun Maverick. It's a movie that takes place 2 years after they capture Solomon Lane. Ethan Hunt is still on the quest to. I can't really figure out. Maybe I missed something. He's still on the path of the syndicate, but it almost seems like he's in hiding. Like he's in hiding from the CIA, or I don't know. Did you? I can't remember if it was because this movie's like 2 hours and 27 minutes long, but it almost feels like Tom Cruise has been on a warpath for like 2 years to try to take down this group who are now called the Apostles because he gets this like book of Homer's Odyssey, which has this like old school recording device in it that he pricks himself with blood coming out. But I gotta ask like your opinion. Is he still like undercover trying to find the syndicate, or do you think is he been doing missions for the last 2 years and it just came to this? Like where do you stand on that?
I kind of took it as it was kind of a consistent thing. Like if something new, like
Mhm.
you do whatever normal missions would come up, but then when the syndicate reared its ugly head, you kind of followed that. Or maybe there was bits along the way that like all of the different missions that he had led to this place. Or picked up
I mean, I
clues
get
on things along the way.
I guess they do kind of talk about some missions that they went on that Solomon Lane was a part of, like a plane crash, which I thought
Yeah.
they were referencing the second movie, but they weren't because like Ethan Hunt would have been on that mission. But I guess that's one of my kind of complaints about this movie is it's not entirely clear from the beginning, like what exactly Ethan Hunt has been doing for the last 2 years. It just feels like he's been hiding and he's been just working and they've been doing missions, but it hasn't been like in the last movie. He's been on the path of the syndicate, so it's much more clear than I feel like it starts out. That's my kind of one issue with this movie is it never entirely sets up the premise properly at the beginning,
Yeah.
I guess.
But you look at some of
But
the other ones, and there wasn't, there was some allusions to, going like things from there going into the main story, but there was a lot of them that didn't really necessarily like link strongly to the main storyline.
well, no, I mean that's true. You're right, but a lot of the other movies didn't have like the continuous plot device or plot structure
Yeah, that's
that these
true.
last three movies have had, and that's my only reason for saying that. Maybe this is a mission that he was just on to find the cores, plutonium cores, to get make sure Doc Brown got him or something. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think
But
I think too the idea that it's like, and this is a terrible connection, but the one guy in Star Wars was like, we'll report something when there's something to report. And maybe,
yeah,
like the line of things on the syndicate or on the apostles kind of goes a little cold, so then you go off and do other stuff until more information is found.
yeah, or maybe like I said, sometimes these missions, involving like big syndicates, or as we learned, they're called the Apostles now because it's like an offshoot. I do know undercover stuff can take a while. I mean, I think Ilsa was undercover for a couple years, a year with Solomon Lane and stuff like that when she was, before Mission Impossible Rogue Nation happened. But I mean, basically, they are tasked to retrieve these plutonium cores, and I mean it's a pretty cool sequence of like it's very well shot. It's they are basically the one character that is Luther Stickle is in the van and he gets taken hostage by gunpoint, and they're having this kind of exchange in the process, and they hand over the plutonium cores and they want the money, which is a typical spy recovery situation. And of course, Luther Stickle doesn't bring the money like it's supposed to, and it becomes this like big gun battle, and people start dying, and it leads to Luther Stickle's character basically. They're giving this guy the ultimatum. They're like, well, you give us the plutonium cores, and we'll give you Luther Stickle. And Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt's character basically shoots Luther in the chest, and of course, he's not dead. But I mean, what do you think about this scene? Because they lose the plutonium cores as you expect, and I don't know.
Oh
Tell me.
yeah. No, I think I mean it goes to show ideally speaking that Ethan had trust that Luther wasn't going to move, because had he moved, he would most certainly have been dead. But he
Yeah,
took, like anything else in what we've seen in Mission Impossible, everything is half dumb luck and half calculated risk. That's kind of what Ethan Hunt's character comes down to, at least for me.
Yeah, and I mean there's a talk about this scientist or whatever that is part of this whole thing, and they show him and stuff like that. And we have like the little scene after this scene, but I mean, to me it's kind of funny that Benji's like the out on the field IT tech guy, and then we have Luther Stickles who's also the computer guy. So we have like two computer guys working in tandem together. It feels kind of like a little too much for IT tech guys or whatever. I don't know how you feel about that.
I was thinking about that when we were watching the movie, and to some extent, like the kind of, because you look at the original, we'll take the original movie to start with. You had your point man, which was Ethan. You had your tech guy. You had your, kind of your auxiliary people that kind of got shifted around and did a whole bunch of different stuff. One might be a demolition expert, but she could also, run intel and 5 other things. She can make julienne fries, but you don't, as you go along, you kind of lose that. Like, everybody has a different task, but like everybody speaks every single language. Everybody kind of knows the ins and outs of the basics. When you get into the more specialized computer stuff, then yeah, that changes. But by and large, you don't have a weapons expert and a tech guy and a point man and a master of disguise or whatever.
Yeah, and it's I mean, it's a cool little sequence. You mentioned something about like the lighting was really cool. Like,
it was
one
really
side
neat.
was like green and one side was like all reflecty and J.J. Abrams lens flares and stuff like that.
Yeah, oh my god, so many lens flares.
It's kind of funny that it's a movie that's produced. I haven't said anything before, but J.J. Abrams at this point is just the producer of the film. I'm sure he was on set doing his producing thing or whatever with his, I think Brian Burke is also his producer. And it's kind of interesting to see that J.J. Abrams has become kind of, outside of Tom Cruise, like kind of the shepherd of this film. I'm sure J.J. Abrams comes on set and just kind of talks to Tom Cruise about what they're doing and how this will work. And Chris McQuarrie was probably given some help from J.J. Abrams doing the action oriented sense and stuff like that. And it just, there is actually a level of like maturity, not maturity, there's a level of self-assuredness and stuff like that with Christopher McQuarrie in this film. It feels like he learned
you got a solid
from,
you got a solid base to grow from.
yeah, it feels like he is really has his head really on his shoulders now and feels very confident was the word I was trying to think of. It feels like he learned a lot from Rogue Nation and from his working on a couple other films like Jack Reacher, to the point where everything about this movie feels tight in its progression. It's a long movie. It's 2.5 hours long. The next one's like 2 hours and 40 minutes long, just to let you know. But this movie feels like there's no meat left on the table, no fat, I guess you could say. It feels like a movie that's constantly on the move for as long as it is. And this first scene gives you a lot of information for the time frame that it's in. And when they lose the device to the apostles, it leads into the sequence which is very familiar, very similar to the first sequence in Mission Impossible, where you have this guy who they were looking for, who they made sound like he's in a car crash. Ethan looks like he's very angry about the situation because they have, and we'll talk about this in a second, I promise, Trev, but they have CNN on the TV. There's been a nuclear blast. We'll talk about it, trust me. There's a nuclear blast situation. And what's really cool about it is it harkens back to the original movie but it seems like IMF has these buildings, or they find buildings, or they rent buildings to construct sets to get information from these individuals. And I really like the fact that they harken back to the first movie and do this, and they have a really cool kind of like way of tricking this guy to give him the code so they can find John Lark and find out where the nuclear plutonium cores and stuff like are at. And I gotta ask you, Triv, and once again we will get into the CNN stuff, I promise. What do you think about like stuff like this, like the trickery, the surprise nature? Because you and I, like, for you, you may have kind of guessed what was going on, but when I first saw it, I'm like, oh my god, it really happened. They exploded. But it kind of makes sense that they would be using this digital trickery, or whatever you want to call it. And, I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean,
we will talk about CNN in a second.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that they did a good job with it, trying to reconstruct that kind of a space in a realistic fashion. I mean, and obviously, you kind of have to suspend disbelief simply because, it's a Mission Impossible movie, or any movie for that matter. But I think they did a great job of making it sound and look like a real hospital room and such. But with the at their level with that kind of power, you would, if they couldn't do it properly, show that they wouldn't be quite the, hardcore agency that they are.
Yeah, and this happens a couple times in this movie where they play it one way, but they're actually doing like the other way, like the Ocean's 11 thing, where you see it one direction and you find out it's actually being swerved into another direction.
Right.
And I like that they play off so well. Like Tom Cruise plays off being very angry, and Luther plays off, just kind of the sad sap, and they're able to get the information, the codes for wherever these things are located. And of course, you reveal it's a set. The guy was only under for an hour. Simon Pegg's character was the driver who hit him or whatever.
I mean, it kind of does play with the whole idea of an unreliable narrator. You're kind of judging the situation from what you're seeing and what you're being told, which obviously you'd do that anyway. But you kind of take all the assumptions and hints from what's in front of you and not necessarily what's behind it. So
yeah, and they use that unreliable narrator like idea throughout this movie for a few scenes, like especially in the middle with the whole John Lark stuff, and then at the end with like the revelation and all that stuff. But all right, Triv, I promised you I would talk about this. You were mentioning something to me about, and I've thought about this in the past about how movies use real news stations or real anchors as a way to tell information to the audience or tell information to make the movie go. And I said to you, I think it sucks because it really, for a movie like Mission Impossible or Ghostbusters or anything that has news footage or news anchors, why do they need CNN? Why does that need to happen? Like, why do these anchors need to be there? It actually takes away from the fictional narrative. It makes it feel like it's supposed to be in the real world narrative, and it just feels inauthentic to what the movie's trying to do. And I once again, I like I said, I don't like when they do it. I think it's a cheap way to throw somebody in there, like a Wolf Blitzer or
Anderson Cooper,
whatever, Cooper, or whatever they put in there, and it feels like they should have just done like MNN or something like that. I don't know. I mean, tell me what your thoughts on that are.
I'm kind of in the same boat because there's that level of I don't know. It's just like you said it. There's that realm of fiction. There's that realm of truth, and I don't know. Like I remember this is a terrible example, but like Sharknado, you had Matt Lauer and Al Roker kind of doing the whole back and forth talking about, the sharks are falling on New York, and that's a statement I never thought I'd say. You've got like things like that, and obviously the network is owned by NBC. Hey, let's cameo the hell out of this shit. But for something like this, it's a different thing. I think they're trying to add that authority and that authenticity to what is. They're trying to make it more. Look at what happened. Oh my God. But it's still just a movie in that respect.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like when you put a Hollywood cameo into a movie like, I don't know, The Rundown with The Rock, when Arnold Schwarzenegger pops up. It's just like, you didn't need to do that. You're just flexing your muscles to show Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I don't discredit Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm just saying, like, you don't need to do that. It's stupid. It makes your film look kind of ridiculous. Like it says, I mean, it's not the worst thing. I mean, this is still a great movie. It's just, you didn't need Wolf Blitzer in this movie. You didn't need anybody. You just need to show footage from a random news station that shows nuclear weapons. I mean, the worst part of it all is it's a fake newscast. So here they have, as we learned in this fake scenario, the bombs never went off, and Wolf Blitzer is being played by Benji Dunn. And it's just like, so you went through all this trouble and you got the likeness of Wolf Blitzer instead of just being a random news story, bring in some random news reporter that is an actor and actress in real life and have them read the manifesto so you can get the code. It's so kind of, I don't know, it feels cheap, to be fairly honest. And they're using Wolf Blitzer as a, I don't know.
I think just kind of talking through it, I do think that they chose to go that route just to kind of, like I say, add gravity to what was going on. If you just
but you don't need Wolf.
No, I know, but I think
like
I think
you just do some random big anchor. That's just.
I know. I think it was a matter of flexing muscle. It was to make the quote authenticity of the moment for the guy that they're trying to like convince. I don't know. It's always going to be a matter of flexing with things like that. It's never, because obviously in that world, Wolf Blitzer is just, random anchor number 17 or whatever. But yeah,
Well,
it's
no, but
always an
he's like
interesting choice.
the
I know
problem is he's Wolf Blitzer. He's
I
not
know.
random anchor. He's Wolf Blitzer, and they say it's just.
I know, but I suppose it's
I,
that showing
we're really
it
like
on
hard.
a
Yeah, I
I think
mean
it's just
we're
that
getting into
national
like
level thing. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a choice that's made all the time, whether you're talking about something like an asylum movie, all the way up to like
Yeah.
whatever the latest greatest blockbuster, end of the
Well, no,
world
I
type
tell you a
movie
perfect
is.
example. It's like the scene in Spider-Man 3 when they have the whole Venom thing at the end. It's like the newscast and the woman's go, and she's just narrating the whole entire fucking movie, and it's just like, oh god. Anyways, I mean that once again, that is a small part of this really good movie, and it's unfortunate they do it, but it is the nature of everything. And basically that's when the Mission Impossible opening intro theme happens. We've seen it before. It's really good. It's really well done. It's fun, exciting. You get shots and scenes of the movie itself, and we learn a little bit about the movie.
And
Fire, and you really love the title sequence of the Mission Impossible Fallout thing.
I do.
It looked like a nuclear explosion, so that was pretty cool. But
yeah,
from here on out, basically the whole entire movie is for Ethan Hunt and his crew to recover these plutonium cores. Of course, Henley, the Alec Baldwin character, is now the head of, or the secretary of IMF. The character played by Angela Bassett, who plays Erica Sloan, who I think is very underutilized in this movie. I don't know how you feel about her.
Oh, 100% underused.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody that has a lot of gravitas like Angela Bassett does, she's barely in this movie, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense. But I mean, she is there to introduce us to John Walker, who is played by, of course, the very handsome, very well built, all uber nerd that is, of course, Henry Cavill, who of course is the Man of Steel himself, or he was at one point. This is, of course, the movie. This is well known. It was very much a story back in 2018. The movie that they had to digitally alter his face because he could not get rid of the beard because he was under contract with Paramount. They said no, he could not get rid of that beard. So therefore, we saw what happened with that movie, Justice League, or whatever the hell it was.
It was Joss Whedon Batman v Superman.
Yeah, so this is the reason he had to do. They had to do all the digital alterations and whatnot. But I mean,
you think though with the Angela Bassett character, like
Yeah.
you look back at Rogue Nation, and they kind of did the same thing with Alec Baldwin. He really wasn't in it that much.
No, but I feel like there's more to his character than there is to Erica Sloan's character. I feel like Erica Sloan was a little bit like not even the character that Ray Fiennes plays in the James Bond series, but she just feels like she's just there to introduce us to Walker, who, I gotta ask you this question. I love Henry Cavill. I think he's fantastic as an actor. I think he's fun to watch. He's very charismatic. He comes off kind of as an idiot in this first part before we start really getting to know him, because the whole sequence is introducing us to Walker. They're going to fly into Paris to meet the white rabbit
Widow.
White Widow, who of course is played by Vanessa Kirby, who has an interesting back history to the franchise itself. And they're on this plane, and this is why I think he comes off as like an idiot, or he's trying to play off as an idiot. Ethan Hunt's character, who's been warned by Erica to make sure not to screw up this mission, and the same thing at Huntley. It's just they're warning Hunt to just be careful and not screw this up, and they're bringing Walker to watch over him. But when they do the Halo jump, which becomes the first true action sequence of this movie, there are things that Walker says which come off as a little almost like playing him as a dummy in a lot of respects, with Ethan Hunt's trying to explain to him the whole idea of like, what they need to do to get the face scan to do the mask thing, how to wear the mask. It almost seems like Walker doesn't know how to wear the Halo suit mask and stuff like that, because you're like, oh, do you have your air hose stuck in and stuff like that? And then when Ethan Hunt goes to look outside the door of the plane, or the plane thing, there's storms. So he's like, we need to rethink this because we're going to get hurt in this storm. And Walker disconnects Hunt's air thing and jumps out like an idiot. And I got to ask you this question. I know this is like a long kind of diatribe, but like, what do you think about the introduction of Walker? And kind of, do you feel the same way I do? Do you feel he's played for a little bit of like an idiot? Like, I don't know. I mean, tell me what you think.
At that point, I think he, to some extent, was a surrogate for the audience, like explaining the new mass tech and kind of what they're trying to do. And he kind of, after that, kind of comes off as just like maybe over enthusiastic about what they're doing. Because he's like, let's just jump. You know, he doesn't really give it a lot of thought. So it's almost like a newbie in the field, sort of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's maybe another little issue is they don't really explain whether he's been in the field for a long time. Or
like I certainly didn't really get what he like. You understand that he's an agent and all that kind of stuff, but by and large, yeah, his role as far as like what his history is. But with any of them, we really don't get that off the bat. We kind of learn it as we go.
Well, the reason I say this is when William Brandt is introduced, he doesn't come off like this. He comes off like a guy that is just kind of put into a predicament where he feels like he's not trained for that. But you have a character like Walker who is trained as a secret agent, basically, or an agent, and he does this like wet behind the ears type of mentality, and he jumps out of the plane, and Ethan's like, crap, and he has to jump out of the plane too. We get an actual live action, him jumping. I mean, this is something that Tom Cruise trained a year for, apparently, like the whole how to jump out of the plane, how to use the device and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And of course, they go through the storm, and Walker makes some joke, and they get struck by lightning. It just feels like that there's something that he is either playing, because I mean, you know, kind of where his character is going now. If you've seen the movie, you know what his character is. That maybe this is kind of a front for his true intentions. But I mean, I don't know. It's just something I was thinking about when I was watching this movie, because his character in this short beginning before the halo jump, which I'll ask you about, feels really off compared to the rest of the movie with how he plays his character. He feels more of a conditioned veteran soldier agent than what he does here. It's a really weird kind of structure to a character. I guess I didn't really understand why they would go that route, but maybe it's just something he was very excited. I don't know.
I mean, and this is conjecture on my part, but could it be a case where you've got, like, you put anyone up against Ethan Hunt, you know, like he's kind of the badass that knows everything. And whether you're talking about Tom Cruise or Ethan Hunt, he is kind of the badass and he knows everything about anything. And then you put this guy that, regardless of how good he is in the field, you're jumping out of a plane and you have a very specific location to like jump to. And then there's everything that involves like the behind the scenes of everything that Henry Cavill's character is kind of hiding. You know, maybe there's that nerve thing. I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that's like imperative to this movie to be bad or good. It's just something when I look at this from like a critical standpoint, I start noticing these things.
Yeah,
and I start to wonder if like there was a specific reason that Christopher McQuarrie wrote into the script, or when he was talking to Cavill and stuff like that. And I look at it just like, was there a reason behind it? And I don't know. There's no real idea, or I would have to literally sit down with Christopher McQuarrie or Henry Cavill and talk to him about this particular scene. They'd be like,
that would be terrible.
Dude, we're not here to
never want to do that.
Yeah, they don't want to hear about that crap. They don't want to hear about the nerd asking questions like, you know, Simpsons asking about a Fallout Boy or something like that. But no, I mean, the real thing about this movie, real thing about this is I don't think the Halo jump is imperative to them in Paris. I think they could have done a million other ways, but I think you feel probably the same way I do. I think doing this Halo jump actually makes this movie that much better, because they can literally like drive into Paris, into this place. But instead of doing that, they jump out of an airplane, Halo jump, which is a form of like, you know, jumping from really high depths from the atmosphere and stuff like that. Go through the storm, and he has to rescue Walker, and then Walker says something which is really funny when they land and stuff like that. I mean, you agree with me that this is something that really didn't need to happen. I mean, they didn't need to go this far, but it makes it that much better. It makes it that much more thrilling. It makes it
Well,
that much more interesting for a movie. I don't know.
oh
Tell
no,
me.
absolutely. I mean, you look at Rogue Nation, and when we talked about how they built the stunts and then they kind of built the story around it. I think that was probably the case here. They looked at all the things that they could do, insurance aside, and said, "Hey, this would
Yeah.
be really cool if we Halo jumped. Where do we fit it? Okay, we'll build the story like they'll start in Paris, they'll do this, they'll do that, they'll do the other thing." And they bridged the big crazy set pieces with the story of how to get from one thing to the next.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, you could do it. Any movie would probably do it simpler than this, and like I said, not have people jumping out of airplanes. That's why, you look at like the scene in Godzilla where they had the guys jumping out of the plane with the red lights or whatever, red smoke. I mean, they don't have to. This is stuff that they do because they know it'll thrill the audience. And once again, it's just. Maybe they felt like I don't know. Maybe Ethan felt like this was the best way to get into the White Widow to talk to her, but it's just like they kind of land on top of the building, and they kind of go into the building in their suits and stuff like that. And it's just like it doesn't. It's like one of those scenes that really doesn't need to happen. And it is put in there as like kind of a really cool action scene. In a lot of respects, it's like the Burj Khalifa. Unfortunately, going outside the window is something that had to happen because they had to get to the server room, and the water tunnel thing in Rogue Nation had to happen because they had to get into the system. And
well, they built them because every single one of these movies has upped the odds. Like if you tried to take something that is more akin to the first Mission Impossible movie, it wouldn't have that same effect. I mean, look at anything. Look at wrestlers or stunt people from the 80s versus now. Not to say that there isn't amazing stunt work done then and now. All of those things that set the precedent then, had to be upped to keep audiences in participation and the interest in the holy shit moments,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's just you got to up the ante to impress the audience. I wish Fast and Furious did this better, but I mean, they went to space, so they kind of ruined ruined that.
Next up is multiverse.
Oh God, don't go there, please. Don't go there.
Multiverse.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, they land on top of whatever nightclub that they're at, and I like that the jump out of the plane is in Abu Dhabi and they land in Paris. It's like, man, how far were they flying? That was a long flight, long jump. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's supposed to look like Paris, but basically I love nightclub scenes in movies. You saw it in like the Batman, and you see it, I don't know, I can't think of any other movies, but you see these nightclub scenes where John Wick did it, John Wick Chapter 4 I think as well. And I love these scenes because you can have like a really cool dance rave scene, and you can have all these really cool lights, and then they go one step further where they walk into this like room because Ilsa's there and stuff like that. They walk into this room and it has just windows everywhere, like mirrors, which is really cool. It's like a really cool aesthetic. But they also walk into like the bathroom where they need to tackle this guy who's supposed to meet the White Widow and stuff like that. And I mean, this is an action sequence where I feel bad for the bathroom. The bathroom didn't deserve this. The bathroom is just there for you to shit and piss in, and instead they have the double cocking of the guns of Henry Cavill and stuff like that. And it's a really cool action sequence that everybody gets beat up, and I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but like they're there to knock out this guy and to scan his face, and of course they've destroyed the computer, and
they destroy the guy's face, and
yeah.
And there are actually some really great little comedic moments in there. Like,
Yeah.
you get the other clubber guys coming in and kind of making shit out of the, what's going on behind the door, guys? And then the fact that Ilsa like shoots up the guy's face, and there's it's one thing that Mission Impossible does really well. It's kind of those little, they don't feel out of place. Like they're little comedic moments or, humorous moments that kind of add to the scene. They don't really take away from it.
Yeah, and I mean it's just a fun sequence. Once again, it doesn't really need to be there, but it's fun to watch, Henry Cavill get beat up and then beat up people, and it's fun to watch Tom Cruise beat up people and get beat up, and it's fun to just watch him destroy a bathroom, which I love the scene when when the three guys walk in, Nielsen puts Henry's face back, Walker's face back, and there's like blood all over the place, and like everything's destroyed. And Cruz just walks over. He's like, "No, you guys need to leave right now. It's not good right now." And I think that's the kind of stuff you're talking about, where it adds a little bit of levity to this very serious movie, and
Right.
it's just like, once again, the cocking of the arms that Henry Cavill does is probably the most famous moment of this movie. It's memed to death and stuff like that. Even Henry has talked about how much he didn't really think about it being such a meme, but it's Henry doing what Henry does. The guy's an uber nerd, so he does what he does. But I mean,
He does it well.
yeah, this, like I said, the first thumbnail I ever put up was Ilsa and Ethan talking in that mirrored room, which you actually mentioned how cool you thought it was when they were walking.
Oh yeah.
It's like that stuff, that kind of stuff, the uniqueness of like, and you see in a lot of action movies, a lot of spy movies that actually do production quality very well. Like I love stuff like this because it gives a unique balance to a movie that is mostly about action, but you get this like really cool production set piece to it. You allow it to be kind of unique in a lot of respects, and
and they really their location scouts. I mean, they just because if you're going to Paris or going to London or Budapest or wherever, you could basically put your camera in any direction and see really cool stuff. But they shoot it in interesting ways that kind of sets it apart. Like even when you're seeing the same locations you might have seen in other movies, they do a nice job of kind of mixing up how they film it and how they use it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fairly honest, using the same sets in different movies in different ways is not necessarily a bad thing, because it allows the beauty of the world. I mean, the whole idea of like shooting in Paris or shooting in London or shooting in these other country places that are not America. I mean, you could shoot Grand Canyon or something like that. There's a history to it, so there's an architecture feel to it that only London can give you, or only Paris can give you, or wherever they go. And there's something like cool and fun, and like I said, there's a history behind it, so you get this like really kind of cool aesthetic that you can't find anywhere else. So if you can shoot it the right way, you can make it look really cool. And it's you see it through this entire movie. It's like I said, you see it through other movies, but you see it definitely through this movie pretty well. So
and it would be, you look at like something like Jason Bourne, and obviously by this point I think the Bourne movies were pretty much finished up, at least as of I think this time. But there is a lot of that's handheld, and it's done in more of a guerrilla filmmaking kind of way to some extent. But this, like, you look at the last 15-20 minutes, you're in this absolutely beautiful scenery, and all of this like crazy shit is going on, but you can still see like the beauty of it and like this utter destruction that happens. And they did just a fantastic job of kind of melding the two and having the insight to say, okay, this is where we're shooting, this is what we're gonna do, this is how we're gonna make it work. And they're able to kind of get both of those sides of it, at least to me.
And like I said, you look at this nightclub stuff, and it just is beautiful and well shot, and the lighting is just on par with like some of the best. And I know when we got to the Vanessa Kirby, you mentioned how it felt like Nightmare Alley a little bit.
Oh man, massively. It had that kind of like vintage feel, like the way that she was dressed, the way that the set was decorated, everyone that was in it still kind of kept that old school feel.
Yeah, and I mean, it does. I love them using dollies in movies, because you get like you can have like a full room sequence, and you can have like a dolly or a steady cam just kind of move around the scene, and it gives like a really cool kind of effect of just like being able to see from all angles, which is really cool. But Vanessa Kirby is the White Widow, or Alana Mitsopoulos, and she starts talking about Max. Now, if people don't remember, Max, of course, was the main broker's black market dealer in the first movie. She, of course, was played by Vanessa Redgrave, and this character of the White Widow is the daughter of Max, which I thought could have been really cheesy, to be fairly honest. I thought could have not worked, because you're bringing back a character that is the daughter of a major character from the first film, who I thought was a pretty decent character. But Vanessa Kirby is an actress who I find very fascinating, and she has a very interesting appeal to her. She's very sexy. She's very beautiful, but she's also very headstrong. She's very secretive and mysterious, and this character could once again be cheesy and over the top and silly, but there's something fun and unique. And she, of course, comes back for the next movie, which I don't know her, like, her whole role, but I love the fact that she feels interesting. She feels cool. She feels fun. She is somebody that's not in the movie for very long, but there's still this is like fun nature to her, and how she handles Ethan, which she thinks is John Lark. And just I love everything about what Vanessa Kirby's doing. And I don't know if you agree or not, but yeah, I'm kind of interested what you
Yeah.
think.
I think she did a good job. She plays a lot on the strengths of Vanessa Redgrave's character, which, you know, being her daughter, I think you would expect a lot of that to start with.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she definitely she comes in, does what she needs to do, and leaves an impression.
Yeah, and like she wants a specific thing, and she will do everything in her power to get that thing, but she puts all her trust into Ethan Hunt's character, who she thinks is John Lark. It's just, even though you're not really entirely sure like what her ulterior motive is at first, the idea of like what she wants and how mysterious she is and how she plays into the story is more of just a character that has just a aura about her more than anything. And it's really
Yeah.
fascinating to see. She, really just kind of is there in the background for Ethan Hunt to go to Ethan Hunt and his crew to get to the next part of the story. So I mean, they go to whatever palace, wherever they're at, and they talk, and it's really interesting. They basically, she wants her brother and Ethan Hunt and his crew to break out Solomon Lane. Now, for what reason, it's not really totally explained, but I'm assuming that Solomon Lane is causing some issues with her group of whatever she is. I love at first that like you get to kind of Ocean's 11 what if scenario where we see all parts of how this kind of takedown and recovery of Solomon Lane is going to happen. And there's been a scene in the beginning, and there's a scene here where Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt's character has kind of a thing in his head that pops up where it's like his biggest fears start pulling out, where in the beginning of the movie where he's marrying Julia's character, and there's an explosion which brings up the biggest fear of him not being able to save the people he loves. We see Solomon Lane. And the same thing here, where the biggest fear is like not being able to accomplish the mission, or like accomplishing the mission but having to kill people, which is not what he wants to do. And I love the fact that we get kind of this kind of pulling at his soul a little bit. I don't know if you feel the same way or not.
I think it definitely adds an extra layer to what we know about him, because up to this point, he's shot, he's tossed out of cars and airplanes and everything else, and he may limp away, but ultimately he's fine. And it's always, you can walk away from a lot of physical stuff, but it's harder to walk away from the mental stuff. And to see little cracks here and there, I think that'll come into play more in Dead Reckoning. I mean, why else would they be showing bits like that here?
Right. And I think it's always been Ethan's kind of folly, or not folly, but Ethan's kind of not strength, but his weakness is that he cares so much about the people that he is willing to let things fall by the wayside when he should be more worried about saving lives. And here he's more worried about saving his own people, which is not a fault of his own, but is more just kind of, what do you do like when you're put in a scenario where you have to break the guy out of jail who you put in there for almost taking down the IMF or taking down society in the world, and here you're having to make that choice. And this is probably the longest, I think it's the longest action sequence in the entire movie, because it basically is the breakout of Solomon Lane. And once again, we're 6 movies into this franchise, and similar to the Fast and Furious franchise, at this point is, this very well, like I do, when you get to like horror franchises, or you get into most franchises, the 6th film is never where the franchise peaks or the fifth film, it's always the first film, maybe the second film, but it's never the fifth or sixth film in a franchise. And that's what's happening here. And that's what happened in the Fast and Furious movies, where the franchise actually got better. It's indicative of this action sequence, or these action sequences, especially this one that we're going to talk about, where it's like a long 15-minute action sequence with, you know, car chases, motorcycle chases, people being shot at, people being like dunked underwater in a real physical thing. The breakout of Solomon Lane, Ethan Hunt having to kill some people to save a police officer. I mean, what do you think? I mean, it's a lot of stuff, but it's quite enthralling.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. You know that there are some horror franchises that really find their footing as they go along, or they had it, lost it, and regained it depending upon who's at the helm. But yeah, for movies like this, it is those outside the box decisions, I guess, that do make the difference. You know, if you know the whole franchise has been about bigger, better, stronger, and I think you can say that about both Fast and Furious and this. I do think that they do it to a more, not adult audience, but a more like semi realistic, or as realistic as you're gonna get kind of thing. With this, they go outside the box, and you know, it's not like at one point they basically run into Rebecca Ferguson's character and send her up and over the car. You know, it's moments like that, or it's where he falls down the what looks like a pit thing into the sewer, but then they gets picked up by Benji and Luther. It's those moments that you know that he's going to escape and that everything's going to be cool, but it's that interesting journey of getting there that's so fascinating.
Yeah, and once again, I've mentioned this before. I'm going to bring up Rob again, who once again is on a lot of the videos I do. This action sequence starts out small, a breakout of Solomon Lane, and it builds and builds. It goes to a point where, you know, they're on the run from the police. They run into the alley. They take motorcycles. They travel down Paris and the Arc of Triumph, or whatever it's called.
Arc of Triumph.
Yeah, thank you. And it just keeps building. It gets to the point where, you know, Solomon Lane is officially broken out, and they're in the car, and Ilsa, who has told Ethan basically that, you know, she has to do what she has to do, you know, shoots at him and then chases after him, and it makes ironically, it makes the car chase sequence in the fifth film quaint by comparison, because it builds and builds and builds to the point where, you know, you get to the point where they're going to change out Solomon Lane for Benji to kind of work, you know, getting John Larkin, stuff like that. And I just think it's impressive how insane, and how, as you mentioned as we were watching this movie, how much effort and work and planning it takes to do stuff like that. I mean, the scene's like 15 minutes long. It's insane to watch. I mean, it's not one shot, but it's just like an insane one thing after another. It builds and builds and builds, and it's crazy.
Yeah, no, 100%. I don't think that the 1 in 5 was quaint, but it did have definitely a different perspective. In this one, you know, they're chasing around the streets of Paris, which, you know, you've already got a very tight space to start with. You have to think about it. You know, they're riding motorcycles through like the middle of very tight spaces, down tight alleys. You know, it's crazy. One other thing I will say about this whole sequence is it goes and goes. It takes these moments. So it's not just pure action and not just like, I don't know, contrived dialogue like it's all about family. It does, the dialogue does kind of relate back to what's being talked about and brings up points that are important. And it does kind of do a stop start thing, but they're never bad stop starts. And the thing that I love most is they go to take out the car out of this garage thing, and right there is like an officer like writing a ticket for a car, and she looks over and she's like, "Oh, hi," and just that whole bit. Yeah. it adds humanity to the moment. It's not just you know, they jump in the car and take off. They actually engage with the moment and let it breathe for a second, because it is what makes these good. You know, it's someone doing the thing and then having a moment to ingest what happened and then going again, and there's a little bit of humor and there's a little bit of all these things, and it works really well together.
Yeah, and it's nice when they actually do that, because it feels like like a breath of fresh air, to be fairly honest. And I really enjoy that. I really feel like it works. And there's a lot of great moments in here between, the questions that August Lark, whatever, August Walker, whatever the hell his name is, starts asking Ethan Hunt a bunch of questions. And Ethan Hunt's like final response is like, if it's crazy enough, then yeah, I probably did it. And it's just, I love that kind of stuff, because you have that like levity of funniness, and then you have the seriousness, and you have the humanistic approach to like all this stuff. And I like the fact that Benji's the one that went down and saved Solomon Lane. I love that Sean Harris actually did this stunt in real life, where they I think it's they flipped the vehicle, or they flipped the tank that he's in, the water comes rushing in, you see him actually doing the breathing motions before the water comes rushing in, because that's how they had the train.
Mm-hmm.
And it's setting up all this stuff that will eventually pay off later. But it's just like the motorcycle stuff that happens in this sequence it almost feels like that Ethan or Tom Cruise just loves being able to run around the cities and motorcycles, and being able to go down real quickly down alleyways and stuff like that, because as you mentioned, these streets aren't very big, so there are small like sharp corners and stuff like that they have to go around, and a lot of traffic, and they're going against traffic, and they, like I said, they crash in an alley, and it's just it's really kind of thrilling to watch, and just makes me excited for whenever they do the next action sequence, because it's going to happen. It's always going to be thrilling in a lot of respects. So
100%.
But I mean, with that said, I mean, the basic thing that happens here is they bring Solomon Lane. He talks to the White Widow about, meeting John Lark and all that stuff. And they bring him down. Henley pops up in this, and it's kind of ironic that Henley just comes out of nowhere. I don't know. It's really weird, Alec Baldwin's character in this movie, to be fairly honest, but it's not like the worst thing in the world. But it basically is a way to bring John Lark out to the mix. They basically are going to turn over Solomon Lane to John Lark, to whatever. And in the process, they use the mass tech, which I actually asked you about this. What do you think of this version of the mass tech? Because it's just basically scanning his face and creating a mold. It feels like, I don't know how you feel
I think
about
it worked well. And we kind of have joked on and off about the mass tech. And it is, I love the fact that it's a reoccurring thing kind of throughout this, and the fact that Benji finally gets to like use one to effect. But yeah, no, I think with the technology that's out there, it makes a lot of sense that it goes in this direction. I'm actually really interested to see how they implement it in the next one.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I forgot to mention that they go from Paris to London at this point, which I don't know if it's 100% told. I think the White Widow says something, but anyways, they're down in the catacombs of London, and basically what's gonna happen is Benji done by surprise. He's like, "What? Are you gonna use me?" It's like, I love the line that Luther says, like, "I don't think they're gonna be able to think I'm Lane," and Benji goes, "Yeah, that's true." He's like, maybe, sure. Doing Simon Pegg doing what he does best is improvising humor, and basically Henley's there. There's a big exchange that goes between Ethan, who's like, "We need to do this," and Henley's like, "No, we're not going to do this." And then they put Henley under with like the whatever machine gun thing or whatever, and they take the device out of Solomon Lane, the tracker, and like you said, a really cool thing with the drone used to take.
They attached the tracker that was in Lane to a drone, and then they send that off to do its thing. And I hope that Benji didn't have to like keep track of it the entire time, because he was trying to do all the other stuff and then having to do that too. Man, I can't even imagine.
I mean, maybe it malfunctioned and fell in the Thames or something like that.
There you go. I think at that point, aren't they? They're still in Paris at that point, I think.
No, they're in London.
Are they?
Because it's all yeah. Because you remember,
yeah. Sorry.
That's why I forgot that. I think the White Widow says something about going to London to meet Lark.
Yeah,
and basically, I mean, we've mentioned this before. I think in multiple movies at this point, the mask for Solomon Lane is way too realistic. So therefore, as soon as he puts on the mask, it looks fake. But when they pan it back around, it's real. If it looks like Solomon Lane, which once again, you have to kind of look past the reality and look past the justification for what these masks are capable of, because there's no way mask would look this authentic.
Hey, you don't know what the CIA and MIF can do.
I'm watching you, Triv. I'm watching you.
Well, you'll never catch me, copper.
Yeah. Sure. No. But basically, at this point, they take what we think is Benji as Solomon Lane to go meet John Lark. It's basically revealed in those certain terms that August Walker is John Lark, the head of the apostles, the one that's committing all this. And he gives a big speech to Solomon Lane, thinking he's, it's to Solomon Lane, and it's blah, 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 blah. It's revealed that Ethan and Luther have taken the real Solomon Lane. They have tricked John Walker to revealing himself. And of course, the Solomon Lane that John Walker is talking to is, of course, Benji. And of course, the Sloane character has been listening the whole time, and Henley has been listening the whole time. And it basically boils down to random mole CIA agent is now the bad guy. Which, I mean, as you admitted, or as you said, you kind of saw this coming from a mile away. I know you did. I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, but... I mean, to some extent, they kind of bring up the fact that Henry Cavill was the villain. So you're kind of going, okay, if he's the villain, where is he going to show up? And it just kind of made sense that he was probably John Lark. But I will say, I felt bad for Benji because he's in his element, he's doing his thing, and then Superman comes in and basically rips off his fake face.
Yeah. And the funny part is, like, when they're talking about John Lark, it does this like pan on Henry's face, and I'm like, at that point, I'm like, it's a little obvious that he is John Lark. I mean, it's like this slow pan on the look of Henry Cavill's face and stuff like that.
I mean, there's nothing for as good as these movies are. They're not specifically subtle,
Yeah, I mean, tall, good-looking guy with a gorgeous mustache and beard comes in for his first movie. I mean, it's like Jim Phillips, what's his face, John Voight coming in, and it's like they're giving all the hints to you that he's the main bad. It's so obvious. But once again, I think Henry Cavill's as an actor in this movie is fantastic. I think he's having a lot of fun. Plays stupid, but he also plays smart. He kicks ass, takes names, and sometimes chews bubble gum. And when it's revealed that he's a bad guy,
grand scheme with these, I mean, and I know I keep coming back to it, and I don't mean this in a bad light by any stretch, but this is still a summer popcorn movie, so you're not gonna go like, depths of his soul. He was abandoned as a child, and that's why he went rogue. He's just a guy.
Christopher Nolan did it. They would.
Well, that's true, but that's Christopher Nolan. This is not Christopher Nolan.
Come on, Triv. No,
was that even a summer blockbuster movie, or was that like the Batman movies? Those were
no, yeah, they were summer movies.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I stand corrected. But these movies are not known for being like soul searching and everything else. They're meant to, take you on a ride.
Searched my soul, Triv, and made me feel something.
Good. I'm glad. More power to you.
Right. No, but yeah, so and then he turns some of the men that are, I don't know, taking hostage Ethan Hunt's character, because Sloane wants them to take down Ethan Hunt and his IMF, and eventually becomes like a big battle sequence, and Ethan has to go chasing after the slow moving John Walker, who somehow is able to get to whatever that whatever that thing is before Ethan can get to him. He's climbing up the helipad
he goes through St. Paul's Cathedral, and then he goes all over the place, like jumping from roof to roof in London, and then
that's the thing, is how either John Walker was moving really fast to get to his location, or Ethan's very slow, because basically
it's not easy to jump from roof to roof in London. I mean, that's why Spider-Man's not there.
I realize that. I realize that. The funny part about it is like this whole big action set piece. Once again, this did not need to happen, but it's much more thrilling this way, where he's being chased by the Apostle group or whatever, and they go through St. Peter's Cathedral or whatever, and they go into like this funeral, the possession that's happening, and you know, I love this kind of stuff. He goes up into the rafters and he climbs up on the roof and he's running on the roof, you know, and he breaks his leg in real life while he's running on the
Oof.
roof. And yeah, I mean, you can see it in the movie. Is like you can see the point where he breaks his foot. He kind of hobbles off. There's no one in film that can run like Tom Cruise. I'm telling you what,
No.
he can run miles without stopping. And apparently, this is a thing that people have to learn how to do is run like Tom Cruise because apparently it's a thing that only Tom Cruise really does.
And two, just the
Um,
random, like the way that Benji is like, oh, I'm sorry, you have to take a
oh
left
yeah,
here.
yeah,
I had
like
the
it's
thing
good stuff.
upside down. Oh, I didn't have the 3D modeling on. Oh, you're on a roof. Just that whole
Yeah,
like, oh my
he's like,
god.
you need to go right, and then he looks right, and it's just like a wall, and like the window with like a wall or whatever. He's like, oh no, 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 like he just said, oh no, no, I have it upside down. It's like Benji, what are you doing? It's like Luther's like shaking his head. But I like that stuff because it adds humor to a serious sequence and it allows Simon Pegg to do what Simon Pegg is good at, which is being very goofy in his delivery of stuff and being kind of dry when it comes to his humor, like almost like Mr. Bean a little bit in a lot of respects,
Oh,
where it's just like,
definitely.
yeah, there's just that very authentic, weird goofiness to what Simon Pegg is capable of doing. But I love like, you know, everybody everybody in this like office building is just watching Tom or watching Ethan Hunt as he takes a chair, and I'm surprised they didn't have like pull out their cell phones and like click 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 click, you know, as he throws it through the window, and nobody really responds. They're just like, yeah, this is another day in London. Guy's gonna jump out the window 30 feet or whatever. He jumps out and he runs across. You know, you can see the famous bridge in the background where all the fans are watching Tom Cruise run across the whatever he's on, and you know, it's just I love it because it's absurd. This whole sequence, like these action sequences are always absurd, but it's just Tom Cruise just seems to not run out of breath. Like he never needs to like stop and get water or take a breath, and he's just running and running and running and running and running. It's
He
like
ran so
you need the
far
Chariots of Fire
away.
music,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, run that Chariots of Fire music, and it gets to a point where he finally catches up to John Lark or whatever, climbs up on top or climbs underneath the elevator or the elevator, and John Lark looks down at him and says, "Here's a picture of your ex-wife. You don't leave me alone unless set off the nukes, we're gonna kill her." And I don't know,
Dum
it's
dum
good stuff.
dum.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Henley dies too. Henley unfortunately dies in the middle of this, and he's leaving his body behind. And
Well,
I
that's
meant
what
to
you
ask you,
do.
like, yeah, what do you think about Henley dying? Like, it doesn't feel like it's worth it to be the secretary of the IMF. They usually die,
Uh
or most of them have died.
no, they totally do.
They're like the defensive against
It's
our dark art teacher.
yeah, kind of is. Um, I mean, the only two that we really learn a lot about are Henley and the short one that was played by what was his name? He was shot in the forehead. Tom
Tom
Wilkinson.
Wilkinson.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, you really don't learn about many of the others really in the grand scheme of stuff. So it's a position where you look at and go, okay, here's this guy, he's the secretary, he could possibly disavow me, but there's no real emphasis given it. You know, you have a couple of cool scenes and it's nice to see that Alec Baldwin trusts Ethan's judgment, but then, you know, it's like, oh, he trusted judgment. Well, now he's dead because he trusted, you know, his judgment. Moving on.
yeah, right. And he's like, "You dead? You go
Yeah.
off and
I mean, you knew he
you."
was gonna die. It's like like most mentors in these movies pass, and I suppose that in theory it gives the extra juice that the main character needs to keep rolling. But I don't think, you know, obviously they have a relationship, but if Luther or Benji or Ilsa died, I think it would have had more impact. Not that you want to get rid of those characters because I think they're awesome. But in the grand scheme of character death, it's like, oh, he died. Ah, he lost an ally. That
Yeah.
sucks. Moving on.
The Tom Wilkinson secretary, I feel like he's probably been secretary for the entire franchise run, to be fairly
Yeah.
honest. So he's probably been there for quite a while. That's why there's
Was
that relationship.
yeah, so this is a dumb question and I should know this. The first guy that he runs into at the fancy fish bar in the first movie, was he also the secretary?
The one that like accuses him of being a mole. No, he was the head of the CIA,
Oh, okay.
or
Got
he
it.
was, yeah, or he was. He's the one that Henley and Erica Sloane's character were, like they were his
They
character.
entered. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I don't know what Henry Czerny's Kittredge character does in this new movie, but he has a reason for being in the movie. I just don't know what it is.
I gotcha.
He's definitely not part of the CIA anymore, but yeah. So yeah, he was the same. He was the same role as these other two. So
got
yeah,
it.
but basically once Walker's character escapes with Solomon Lane or whatever, they have to figure out basically where Solomon Lane and Walker are headed to set off the nuclear weapons. I love that they're like, oh, how long is it gonna take? Oh, it's done. So Benji comes over. Oh, it's done. We figured it out. And they talk about like where the nuclear weapons, like what's capable of and what they have to do. You know, they figure out that they need to short circuit the thing, and they have to do it all at the same time and stuff like that, and like short circuit the bombs and stuff like that. But I just love that scene where they're like, oh, how long is this gonna take? And oh, it's done. Oh, we know exactly where they are. We put another chip in Solomon Lane so we can find out where he's at. I do love the scene between Ilsa and Luther, who talks about how Ethan only had two women in his life that he really cared about. One was, of course, Julia. And they talk about like the history of Julia and Ethan. And it's, of course, as we kind of figured out, it's revealed that Ethan really cares about Ilsa as like his love interest, his better love interest, I guess. And I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
And you brought that up last episode too, as far as like what kind of relationship Ilsa and Ethan had. And at that point, like she seems very surprised by the affection in this one. So it does it makes sense that has to kind of be explained. Although I will add, and this is so random, but his poor aunt and uncle that owned that farm and they got arrested back in the first movie, apparently he didn't care much about his aunt and uncle at that point. So he only had two women in his life that he cared about, and neither of them was family.
I mean, I'll tell you what happened. Like, he went off to train with the old man, and they end up being burned alive by some of these weird helmeted white soldiers, and
it's a hell of a way to go out, man.
Yeah, he had to go fight like his father, and in the end, they blew up the IMF. I don't know.
No, I get you. I did appreciate what they did with Julia's character, like, because with a lot of these movies, they find the love of their life, and they're an important part to kind of show like that grounded, quote, real life relationship versus the crazy spy life that the person is dealing with. And then after that movie, or they have a kid or whatever, and then you never hear from them again, or they're a year old, and then suddenly 6 months later they're 18. That's kind of how a lot of these roll. Not that they did much with it in 5, which if you don't have a place for it, you kind of let it go by the wayside for that. But they did do a nice job of kind of like bringing it back around and giving her a happy ending. She didn't die horribly, which was nice.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you, once again, Ilsa is under the thumb of the MI6. Okay. I thought she got away from it, but did she get captured? Okay. It just feels weird that like, oh, she got recaptured. Now she's under the same exact thing that was kind of a problem with her in the last movie. I don't know.
But don't you think too, to some extent, like look at how Ethan tried to get out, and regarded that might have been more his choice. It's not like he was bribed or pulled back in by bad means, but I think you're in that life, and it is hard to get out of because it is what you know.
Yeah, I mean, John Wick did try to retire, and they killed his dog. He's like, nope, that ain't gonna happen. I don't know.
I mean, unless you start your life like 100% over someplace else, and escape forces that by and large have eyes and ears everywhere. I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah, right. Now, I gotta ask you this question. Usually, these movies boil down to like America being destroyed or something like that.
Yeah.
But I gotta ask you this question.
Bad David.
So, oh my god. So no, I gotta ask you this question. They've deduced that they're going to set off the nuclear bombs in this Tate Modern Session Glacier location. I think.
Oh no, the Tate Modern was different than that. They went to the Tate Modern. That was.
Oh, okay. I'm just reading Wikipedia. They're going to Session Glacier area.
Basically, it's in the very, very north of India. Is a place called Kashmir. and there's a
Yeah, thank
giant
you.
glacier there that basically, if these nukes go off, they're going to destroy like a third of the world's fresh water.
Right. And I gotta ask you, usually it's America they blow up, but here they're gonna blow up portions where like it contaminates India, Pakistan, and China. That's a interesting way to go. Like like usually once again it's America or Britain or the typical, whatever, but here they're gonna destroy most of the world's population that are living in these countries, which is where most of
Yeah,
the population lives anyways. And I thought
yeah,
that was
that's true.
a pretty smart move on them. And they use
Well,
a
it's something
medical camp.
outside. Yeah, I mean, I think that they always do a pretty decent job of kind of thinking outside the box. But you look at the past movies, and by and large, they do take place in Europe, or they had the one that was in Australia. But they're
Well, I
always
mean,
wanting to
yeah,
cover
true, but
multiple
like
countries. But yeah,
Ghost
most of the time
Protocol
it's
was gonna have
Europe.
the well, no, I was gonna say Ghost Protocol has the nuke they're going to San Francisco.
Yeah,
So that's my whole point.
no, I
It was
get
just
you.
interesting to go from India to India, Pakistan. But basically, what it's doing is it's bringing back Michelle Monaghan's character. When they go to Kashmir, they realize that she is working at medical camp with her husband, who's played by plastic bag watcher Wes Bentley, um, who they're now married and
That's
they're
awesome.
helping.
I will say too, they brought back because at the very beginning they talk about how there was a smallpox outbreak in Kashmir, and I like the fact that they brought that back around to this point. Like, not that it was a big
Yeah,
plot point or anything, but they still brought it back.
yeah. I mean, that's always fun when they don't forget to do things. Or they
Right.
forget they completely like don't do like they completely forget things like that. But what do you think about Michelle Monaghan coming back? I mean, she was in the very end of the fourth film, but she mostly was just for the third film. Like her character, I feel, is a way for Ethan Hunt to move on. But I like the fact that the whole idea of this last set piece is Ethan and the crew going after Solomon Lane and John Walker and to detonate these bombs, which one of them they find in a cellular antenna or something like that. And I like this stuff is interesting because it allows Ethan and Julia to have their closure that they haven't had through this entire franchise. And I don't know. What do you think about her coming back and that
I
kind of stuff?
appreciated it. I think that if they're going to take, because obviously it's one of those things where, not to quote the Little Mermaid, but I'm going to quote the Little Mermaid. You could, you have a mermaid and a guy. Where will they live? They can't live underwater. They can't live on the land. They're so different, and it. She provided an outlet for Ethan, but in the grand scheme of everything, there was never going to be a way to keep her safe while not
Yeah.
keeping the world safe. And how do you balance
Yeah.
those two things?
Right. And they talk about that in this movie about, you know, he had to do what he had to do to keep her safe and, all that kind of stuff. And I like the fact that, she's not really doing much outside of just kind of helping Luther and kind of being a way for Ethan to move on to Ilsa's character. But it allows more stakes. Like once again, we talk about this series talks about how Ethan, no matter what he does, well, it's like, having a family or something like that. Whatever you do, you're always putting your family's life or he's putting his family's life in danger because of just how things work out.
Yeah.
You cause a big enough scenario, it's going to come back and your family's going to be, it's like Spider-Man revealing who he is or something like that. It's just the unfortunate nature of how it
Yeah.
works out.
It's a superhero dilemma. It's one of those classic hero dilemmas. Not even superhero, just
Yeah.
generally, the reason that even someone like the Lone Ranger wore a mask was because to protect the people he loved, from retribution. And, the fact that they knew and pulled them into that situation, even though she was undercover and did all this stuff, it goes to show that regardless of what Ethan Hunt does, he is still vulnerable in that respect.
Yeah, and plastic bag watcher guy Wes Bentley, I think he knows that Ethan there's some kind of relationship there. It's like, Ethan Hunt just shows up and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're doing research or whatever," and it's kind of odd why he has like a whole group of people and they know each other or something like that. But I mean, once again, it is like his character is just there as more supporting her than it really is much of else. But Really, this boils down to it's a 15-minute, maybe a little bit more sequence
Oh,
of
it's
them
like
trying.
almost half an hour cut down to
Okay, if I was trying to be, I was trying to make it feel better. In the world of Mission Impossible, time does not matter. So
no, it absolutely doesn't. And
it
we've
is
known
a
that. I mean,
construct.
it
Yeah.
is yeah, it's there to give give context, but that's kind of it.
Yeah, because you had mentioned at some point when it was like down to 10 minutes, like this is a long 10 minutes. It's like basically what it boils down to. They're given 15 minutes to give enough time for Walker to go off and be safe, out of the blast zone, which I don't know how 15 minutes away will really help you. But
Especially with a
Solomon Lane,
giant ass nuke. I mean, yeah.
two giant ass, not just one, two giant ass
Yes.
nukes, Trev, two. But Solomon Lane's gonna stay behind and be killed and stuff like that. He's done with the end of his journey. And what this boils down to, Luther, Julia disarming one bomb, Benji, Ilsa trying to disarm the other bomb while being strangled and almost murdered by Solomon Lane, and Ethan Hunt doing what Tom Cruise does, hopping up on the big ball in the middle of the helicopter, which once again he did it's a real thing. He actually did climb that rope, did fall, even though he was on cables, did fall down to the bottom and climbs up and goes on a IMAX helicopter chase after John Walker, Henry Cavill's character, and there's fight, blah 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 blah. The fight, helicopters get destroyed. Of course, Henry Cavill gets impaled by the hook, and Ethan in the last 3 seconds is able to climb 25 feet up a mountain to get the detonator device, and they basically stop the world from ending with 1 second remaining, as these films do. And
absolutely,
what do you
you'd
think
expect.
about right? What do you think about this whole sequence, Drew? What do you think about?
I mean,
Henry
it's
Cavill and his
bombastic
impalement?
and crazy, and the fact that for God's sake, his name's not Harry. Henry Cavill,
He's very hairy, so
you're not wrong. But the fact that he can't pull out his Superman powers and go all evil Superman, I feel bad for him.
oh, but he
No,
has a
but
chain gun, so
oh yes he does, yes he does. But no, it's a fantastic sequence. I
yeah,
love the fact they've got this hook that kind of latches itself into the side of the mountain, and that's holding up two men fighting plus an entire like body structure of a helicopter. It's so bombastic. Like, I don't know how else to describe it besides bombastic. I mean, it is like a level above Burj Khalifa, regardless of how you feel about those scenes. It is just everything about it. It's like, oh well, hey, they can do this. Nope, never mind. The helicopter went away. Oh, okay. Ethan's okay on the side. He stopped at the edge of a hill. Nope. Here comes the other one, rolling along, doing its thing, knocks him down into the crevice. Oh, let's knock him down further into the crevice. Oh boy, now just hanging by a hook.
no, I can't
Oh
remember
God.
if it was in the movie. I completely forgot about this already. If it was in the movie or if it was just in the trailer where Ethan's flying low against the roadway, and like a truck's coming at him, and he like just misses it, and he like
I
flies
don't
up.
think that happened. At least
Yeah, I
with
think
the
I think that
helicopter
was
at
in the
the
trailer.
end. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, he gets. I mean, he gets impaled, Amelia Estevez style,
Yeah.
John Walker, right in the face. It's like, ooh, I remember. I actually remember being in the theater seeing that scene, and everybody's like, "Oh, whoa,
Yeah. I
whoa,
mean,
ah!" I was
poor
like,
Henry
"Oh,
Cavill's face. His face deserved better than that. He kept a mustache for God's sake and had to go
yeah,
that
per contract,
CGI.
yeah."
Exactly. And then they
Maybe that's
take
why
off
he
the
looks the
whole
way he
side of his
does,
face.
right? He gets some fuel or whatever acid, battery acid.
I
But
actually
yeah, that's
thought
probably
his
why
face
they.
was gonna catch fire like before, like the thing, you see him fall, he's got the hook in the side of his face, and the whole side of his face catches fire.
Right. I mean, that's probably why they digitally altered his face in Justice League, because he was all burned up and
Yeah.
his mustache was like, I don't know, but
It's all
that's
singed
why he
to
looks all
hell.
weird. Yeah. But I mean, I get it. As you mentioned before, the 1 second cutting the wires and the what is that word called? Shit.
Disarming the bomb.
No, disarming the bomb, like the what's that word when you like when you play off one thing and it
Oh,
is a reverse of the
juxtaposition.
other? Well, not just a juxtaposition. Fake out, like fake out, like type of
Oh
thing
yeah, yeah,
where
yeah.
it goes bright. It's just a sunset, and Ethan Hunt has a little piece that he's taking out of the device. I mean, 1 second is a very atypical movie trope at this
Oh
point.
god, yeah.
Yeah,
Nothing could end at 15 seconds because that wouldn't be as climactic.
yeah. I mean, they're having arguments about like where they should like. There's like 7 seconds. They're like, do we cut it one? I'm like, guys, you have 5 seconds to make this decision. 3, 2. They're still arguing. I'm like, okay, we'll cut it one. And it's just like, come on, you guys are crazy,
By the
crazy
time you
people.
cut by the time you cut the damn wire, it's going to be 1 if you start at 2.
Yeah, and then Ethan Hunt's 25 feet. He has to climb as the 5 seconds are going. It's just like it's so preposterous and so ridiculous, just how everything just comes together. So,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's just like movie logic. You have to like forgive it for being movie logic, and of course, Ethan has to because he has to be in the next movie, so he has to survive at the end of this, and
Well, he's your main
he
draw too, so I don't think you'd want to kill him
yeah.
off.
Well, I mean, they killed off James Bond, so I mean,
Eh,
anything's possible.
but James Bond is a title. Ethan Hunt is like one person.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Ethan Hunt's a title too. You don't know, True. You don't know.
You're right. You're right. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, he should be. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, every day.
But but basically, Julia gives him a farewell, goodbye kiss, and of course, the trash bag watcher Wes Bentley just he realizes who Ethan Hunt is because I think he said Hunt.
You know what? He
Hunt's last
realizes
name.
that life is like a bag in the wind and how beautiful that whole thing is.
Yeah, he realizes he's gonna be shot by Chris Cooper at the end.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, but no, in the end, Ethan's fine. He's a little injured. Solomon Lane, who survives after being almost killed, is given to the White Widow to do whatever they need to do. Julia says her goodbyes to Ethan for the most part, that they'll keep in touch, just to make sure they survives and stuff like that. And then he touches Ilsa in the face, does the, combing the hair and stuff like that. And
Oh,
Ethan's
it's
like,
so
don't make me
pretty.
laugh. I can't breathe. So,
My ribs, ouch.
yeah.
And that was probably an ad-lib take. He's actually saying, "Oh my
Right.
god, my ribs!" Ah,
They actually dubbed it over like they did in Goonies. It just says, my foot, you're stepping on my foot. It's broken still. No, but it's very sweet ending. It's a very nice. It actually almost feels like if they actually hadn't decided to make Dead Reckoning Part 1 and 2, it could be a nice little send off and
Oh yeah.
to the franchise, which they may have thought about doing. And he has all his friends are safe, everybody's safe. Many people have died, including Paley in the face and explosions and whatever else happened in Mission Impossible 2, and people falling out windows of the Burj Khalifa. Everybody's died, but these 4 individuals are safe, so that's all that matters.
Absolutely.
But he's killed many people.
I will also say, and I know that at this point, mid-credit and credits things, not to say that every movie does it, but you get so used to Marvel kind of pulling it, and DC does it as well. It was so nice to not have those scenes that kind of completely disrupts what happened in the actual movie at the end.
Yeah.
Like, they let it be. They don't have to take it into some dark place that sets it up for the next movie. It just lets it be. And I appreciate the fact that they do that.
Right. And I think this is the end, or at least I think it's the end for this plot thread, because I really do think that Dead Reckoning is going to be all about Ethan Hunt's kind of closure on what he's done and how his actions have affected everyone around him, and how that comes to light and comes to bite him in the ass, basically.
Would you call this his Dead Reckoning?
Sure. I mean, he may die at the end. I don't know, but I really think that's what's happening here. I think everything is going to come to light. Maybe people he knows will die. I don't know, but
not Benji, please, not Benji.
He almost died. Almost died in this one.
Yeah, he did.
But I really think that the Syndicate Apostles thing is actually officially finished for this series. I mean, no, like Sean Harris isn't in this new one. Maybe this is a kind of a playback on the first movie or something like that. I don't know, but
I know what we come to find out, that the whole time, like, all of the movies that happened after 1 are actually happening before Mission Impossible 1. Really?
Don't do this to me. Don't do it to me. Then they're gonna tell me that Jim Phillips has come back to life, and
Yep.
Jason Statham is in this movie, and that's
Yep.
who set the bombs off, and
Yep.
next we're gonna see Dwayne the Rock Johnson as like
Yep.
I don't know, the son of Jim
He's the
Phillips
son
or
of
something.
Julia and Ethan that they never knew they had.
Yeah.
He came out with all kinds of
The
tattoos. They're not sure
45
why.
the 50-year-old man that he was born. You're gonna
Hey,
find out
Ethan
Simon
Hunt
Pegg
is
is a
damn near unstoppable. Who's to say he couldn't, I don't know, have a kid before he himself was born?
I don't know. You're gonna find out Simon Pegg's actually married to Nick Frost. I mean, it's just gonna be all kinds of crazy.
I don't
So
see that as an issue. They seem like they'd be a pretty compatible couple.
right. But with that said, that is Mission Impossible Fallout. It is a really good film. I think it's once again proves that this franchise is top tier action, top tier filmmaking, good action set pieces, good
Absolutely.
technology, good visual effects. One of my favorite score of the franchise by Lauren Balfe. It's a movie that has 97% Rotten Tomatoes. It was like, once again, this is people's favorite film of the franchise. I still like Rogue Nation better, but in closing thoughts, I mean, what do you think? And do you have anything else you want to talk about with the film?
I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, this isn't Mission Difficult. This is Mission Impossible.
I mean, it's now mission difficult over, mission accomplished. Now I don't have to do like 7 films a review a week, so it's kind of nice. But no, I mean, yeah, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to say on the episode?
No,
or on the movie?
I think that it's a very satisfying trilogy. It definitely it definitely got its shit together, or the people involved got their shit together and really made a really, really awesome like trilogy of movies. Any more that come out, definitely gonna catch them in theaters. I'm not gonna I didn't sleep on them previously. I tried. I just, you kind of get out of some of those habits of seeing some of these movies because of Tom Cruise outside of movies, his reputation is what it is. And that's easy to let that kind of lord over it, regardless of how good the movie is supposed to be. I mean, and I guess that might just be me being a complete and utter idiot, which I'm not gonna even remotely deny that I am. But no, it's a fantastic set. The practical effects just, take it to a different level. It is that old school Hollywood, and just that you get that same feeling with Maverick, or Top Gun Maverick. You leave it with something a little bit deeper than just if it was just CGI. And I think that's really, not that every movie should be that. Not every movie can be that, but to have that is such a unique thing today.
Yeah, and it also proves that Tom Cruise, as crazy and kind of problematic as he is, really does care about presenting authentically good films.
Yeah.
Like films that will entertain, or quadrant films that have real soul behind it, which you don't get a lot of times. I mean, once again, some of the best action films of all time are films that really put a lot of heart and soul into creating something truly unique. I mean, one of the films we could talk about is Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
Where it does that exact same thing. It doesn't have like a real plot, but it just, when people have commitment and they commit to the thing, and when they really try, this is what happens, and this is why a film like this is well beloved like it is. You look at all the responses for it, and it's always like one of the greatest action films of all time. And that's what I hope. I like, once again, you and I are both going into unknown territory, or at least I am now, with the next Mission Impossible movies, the next 2 of them, because I don't know anything about them. I've seen the trailers, but I don't know anything about, other than being a reckoning. So it's going to be an interesting thing to see. There's also trains falling out of the sky, and dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. So yeah.
And to
but
take
with
a franchise that since, it's been going for what, 20
since 96,
20, so 27 years.
27 years.
27 years, and you can see, like, there are a lot of movie sequence or franchises that do have that longevity, and they do have their ups and downs. But outside of 2, I think that the consistency that you get for quality is just unmatched. You get the consistency of character. Like, the way that everything is edited. Like there's very few sequences in any of these movies that isn't, tight as can be. The way that it's shot, the whole 9 yards, it works on damn near every level.
Exactly. 100% agree. Once again, my favorite action series of all time. So
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, definitely. With that said, Triv, that will do it for our retrospective version of the Mission Impossible series, going from Mission Impossible 1 to Mission Impossible Fallout. I do appreciate you coming on this journey, talking about these 6 films. I know you are going to come with me for the next 2 films as well. I'm hoping you're going to come. Yeah, you're going to come to at least Dead Reckoning Part 1, but I'm pretty sure I'll get you on for Dead Reckoning Part 2.
Oh, hell yeah.
The entire franchise until they reboot it. But yeah, like I said, as always, it's always awesome to talk about stuff that we love and the films that inspire us and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
well, I appreciate you inviting me along. It's been a hell of a ride.
Yeah, it really is. Now I'm exhausted and I will be going to bed now. No, I gotta edit this video. No, in all honesty, yeah, it's been awesome. So with that said, that'll do it for the last film before Dead Reckoning, the last film in this retrospective, and the book is closed on this for the moment. So Trev, you have content. We're gonna head out, but you have content and you have a theater that you will give to me eventually.
Nope.
Where's that content at?
So my content is far away from the hands of Movie Emporium / Pleasure Emporium, which is a sick joke that Nick tries to trying to expand upon.
Lies, all lies.
But you can find me here on YouTube. I'm at Trivial Theater. Obviously by my name, it kind of gives that away too. I just dropped dropped a review a little while back called Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell. It's a fantastically fun Japanese take on Evil Dead. If you don't check out the review, at least check out the movie because it is so much fun. I also have dropped a little collab called Future War. It is a movie about cardboard boxes, ninjas, cyborgs, exploding dinosaurs, and way too much plaid. But it's a fun little collab and definitely worth your time to check out. So stop by the channel. We do random, obscure, and straight up bad movies, and there you'll probably find something you like, including a few collabs with this knucklehead.
All my plan to get that theater.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But anyways, with that said, this post right after July 4th, so happy Independence Day, happy July 4th to everyone. Celebrate, don't drink too much, or drink too much, have a beer on me, whatever.
Absolutely.
Now with that said, I will either have a non-spoiler review of myself doing Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning right after this video, so look forward to that. But once again, the spoiler discussion will be with Triv over here, so look forward to that. So there will be 2 videos on Dead Reckoning Part 1, I believe, when this some point soon after this video post. So other than that, I have Indiana Jones, which I talked about with right leading up to Dial of Destiny, Jurassic Park, all those videos I posted. Other content like my typical movie reviews in the Fifth Dimension, which Triv is of course on as a co-host with Jacob from Jacob Anders Reviews. But once again, thank you to everyone who watched all 6 of these videos. Thank you for joining me for the road to Dead Reckoning. And without further ado, for myself and Triv, we'll see you next time in whatever review we do next.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. Do.
I'm not ready. I don't want to fall out. I'm still stuck back on Rogue Nation. I'm not ready for Dead Reckoning. My reckoning has not been dead yet. It's not even in the ground cold.